In a bustling city there was a company that everyone knew. It was big, successful, and had employees who worked hard every day. The CEO of this company was a man named Robert Harris. He was the face of the company, the one everyone looked up to. Robert was known for his sharp mind and his ability to make quick decisions. His office was on the top floor, and everyone in the company respected him. Some feared him too. He was always calm, collected, and seemed to have control over everything. But behind that calm exterior, there was something different about him, something no one could quite figure out. The employees often wondered about his personal life, but Robert kept everything private. He rarely showed any emotion and didn't share much about himself. He would attend meetings and make speeches, but those who worked under him knew little about what he was really like. Despite the mystery surrounding him, everyone followed his lead. They had no choice. Robert's decisions were final and his power was undeniable. The company flourished under his leadership, and everyone worked tirelessly, hoping to one day gain his approval. But little did they know, a storm was brewing within the walls of that very company. Jake had always been a reliable employee. He started at the company right out of college and quickly earned a reputation as someone who could be counted on. He was always on time, always prepared, and always did his job with a level of dedication that few others matched. His co-workers admired him for his hard-working nature, and his bosses respected him for the quality of his work. No one ever expected Jake to be in trouble. In fact, he was often praised by his supervisors and had even been promised a promotion. He had a bright future ahead of him in the company, but that all changed one fateful afternoon. It was an ordinary day, or so it seemed. Jake was sitting at his desk, reviewing a report, when his manager called him into the office. He thought it was just another routine check-in, but he was wrong. The words that followed shocked him. "Jake, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we're letting you go." Jake was stunned. "What? Why? I've done everything right. I haven't had any issues, no complaints. What happened?" His manager was silent for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not personal, Jake. It's just a decision from above. You need to pack up and leave." Jake's heart raced. It didn't make sense. He had no warnings, no issues, and no signs that something was wrong. He left the office in a daze, confused and hurt by the sudden dismissal. Word spread quickly throughout the office. Jake was fired. Everyone was in shock. People gathered around the coffee machine, whispering to each other, trying to make sense of what had happened. No one could understand it. Jake had always been a model employee, hard-working, punctual, and friendly with everyone. There were no signs, no warnings that anything was wrong. Some co-workers speculated that Jake might have made a mistake, something serious that no one knew about. But those who worked closely with him knew that wasn't true. His work was flawless. He had always completed his tasks on time, if not ahead of schedule. There were no complaints from clients, no missed deadlines. It didn't add up. Others wondered if Jake had done something personal to upset the CEO. Robert Harris was known for being distant, but could there have been something more? Maybe it was something about Jake's character that no one knew. Was there a personal issue between him and the CEO? The office was filled with uncertainty, and employees began talking about the situation more and more. No one dared to ask Robert Harris about it directly. The CEO was known for keeping his distance from the employees, and questioning his decisions was not something anyone felt comfortable doing. But the uncertainty lingered. What had happened to Jake? Why was he fired when everything seemed perfect on his end? Was there something more to the story that no one understood? Everyone wanted answers, but no one knew where to look. Jake couldn't believe it. He kept replaying the conversation in his head, over and over, but it still didn't make sense. How could he have been fired for no reason? He hadn't done anything wrong. There were no warnings, no complaints, nothing that should have led to this. His whole world seemed to have turned upside down in an instant. In the days that followed, Jake tried to reach out to Robert Harris. He thought maybe there had been a mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. Perhaps there was something he could do to fix it, to prove he was valuable to the company. But when he called the CEO's office, his calls went unanswered. When he sent emails, there was no reply. Feeling desperate, Jake showed up at the company one morning, hoping to speak directly with Robert. He walked past the security desk, his heart pounding in his chest, and made his way to the top floor. As he stood in front of the CEO's office, he hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach this, but he needed answers. When he knocked on the door, Robert's assistant answered with a cold expression. "Mr. Harris isn't seeing anyone today," she said. "I just need a moment with him." "Please," Jake pleaded, his voice trembling. The assistant paused for a second before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harris is busy." Jake's frustration turned to anger. How could they just ignore him like this? How could they dismiss him so easily after everything he had done for the company? But no matter how much he pushed, no matter how hard he tried, the door remained closed. It felt like he had vanished from the company, his presence erased, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized this wasn't just about his work. There was something more going on. In the weeks after Jake's firing, things began to change at the company. The most noticeable shift was in Robert Harris. He became more distant, more reclusive. Employees who had once seen him walking through the office, exchanging pleasantries, or giving a quick word of advice, now rarely saw him at all. He spent most of his time in his office, only emerging for high-level meetings, or when absolutely necessary. Even then, his presence was different. His usual confident and composed demeanor was replaced with an air of tension. He spoke less, and when he did, his words were sharper, colder. People noticed that he no longer smiled. It was as if something had shifted deep within him, something no one could understand. At company events, Robert would make his usual appearance, but he no longer mingled with the staff. He would stand at the front of the room, nodding along to speeches and announcements, but it was clear his mind was elsewhere. Employees who had once admired him began to feel uneasy. Rumors began circulating. Some said that Robert was dealing with personal issues, while others believed that the stress of running such a large company was finally getting to him. But no one knew for sure. All anyone could say was that the man they once respected and feared seemed to be unraveling before their eyes. It was unsettling. Robert Harris, the confident, in-control CEO, was no longer the same. His actions were becoming more erratic, his behavior increasingly unpredictable. It seemed as though something was eating away at him, something no one could quite explain. As the days passed, it became clearer that whatever was happening, it wasn't just a simple case of stress or personal struggles. There was something deeper at play, and it was beginning to affect not just Robert, but the entire company. As strange as Robert's behavior had become, it was the sudden changes within the company that made everyone even more suspicious. Employees started to notice things that didn't quite add up. Small details that had been overlooked before began to stand out. One of the senior employees, Lisa, had worked with Robert for years. She had always been an observant person, and lately she felt like something wasn't right. She had access to the company's private files, and occasionally reviewed personnel matters, as part of her job. One day, as she was going through the paperwork, something caught her attention. There, buried deep in the company's internal records, was a strange note. It was related to Jake's firing. The document was vague, but Lisa could see that Robert had personally requested an in-depth background check on Jake. It wasn't the kind of request one would make for an average employee. The note was marked confidential, and it seemed like Robert had been investigating Jake for weeks before making the decision to let him go. Lisa's curiosity grew. She decided to dig a little deeper, reaching out to the company's security team to look into the CEO's recent meetings. What she found was even more alarming. There had been several private meetings between Robert and a few unknown individuals. The meetings had no formal agendas, no real documentation, they were held in secret, and the details were all kept hidden from the rest of the staff. The more Lisa uncovered, the clearer it became. Robert was hiding something. But what? Why had he been so obsessed with Jake? And why had he made a point to investigate him so thoroughly? Lisa felt uneasy as she pieced together the puzzle, but she knew she was getting closer to something big. Something that could explain not only Jake's firing, but also Robert's strange, increasingly erratic behavior. The truth was starting to surface, and it wasn't going to be pretty. As Lisa continued her investigation, a chilling discovery came to light. The truth behind Jake's firing wasn't about performance or behavior. It was personal. And it had everything to do with Robert's past, a part of his life that he had worked hard to keep buried. Lisa managed to track down old records, and what she found stunned her. Jake wasn't just another employee to Robert. There was a connection between them that no one could have imagined. Robert had known Jake's family years ago. They were connected in a way that went far deeper than business. Jake's father, a well-known figure in the city, had been involved in a tragic incident that had greatly affected Robert. It was an event that Robert had never spoken about, one that he had pushed to the farthest corners of his mind. But as Lisa pieced the information together, it became clear that Jake's father had been involved in a situation that had hurt Robert deeply. A situation that Robert had never been able to fully forgive. Jake, by sheer coincidence, reminded Robert of that painful time in his life. When he saw Jake in the office, he saw not just an employee, but a reminder of the past, a reminder of everything he had lost, and tried to forget. The firing had nothing to do with Jake's work ethic. It was Robert's unresolved emotions that led to the decision. He couldn't face the constant reminder of his past, so he removed Jake from his life, thinking that would somehow erase the pain. But the truth was, Jake had no idea. He didn't know the connection, the history, or the deep scars that his presence had reopened for Robert. To Jake, it was just a sudden, inexplicable firing. To Robert, it was the only way he knew how to deal with his unresolved trauma. The pieces were finally falling into place. Lisa had uncovered the truth, but what she had discovered was far more than just a personal history between Robert and Jake's family. The truth was something that would shake the entire company to its core. Robert Harris, the CEO everyone had admired and feared, had a dark secret, one that he had buried deep for years. It wasn't just the emotional pain from his past that had affected his decisions, there was something far more sinister. As Lisa dug deeper, she learned that Robert had been involved in a scandal many years ago, one that had been covered up by his powerful connections. It had involved Jake's father, a man whose life had been destroyed by an accusation that had haunted him until his death. Jake's father had been wrongfully accused of a crime that had ruined his career and reputation. Robert had been one of the key figures involved in that accusation. The shame of it all had eaten away at Robert, and he had spent years hiding the truth, trying to erase the guilt he felt. When Jake joined the company, it was as though his father had returned in the form of a new, innocent face. Jake's presence brought everything back to the surface, the pain, the guilt, and the unresolved anger. The more Lisa uncovered, the more she realized that Robert had never truly dealt with his past. He had chosen to bury it instead, to keep it hidden behind a mask of professionalism and control. But it was always there, lurking in the background. And when Jake's father's memory resurfaced through his son, Robert had no choice but to act, even if it meant making a decision that would destroy an innocent man's career. The truth shocked Lisa, and as she shared her findings with the rest of the senior staff, the revelation hit everyone like a bombshell. Robert had not just made a poor decision, he had let his past control his present in a way that no one could have imagined. And now, the company was left to deal with the aftermath of his actions.